His name was Richard Skeins. That may not mean very much to people, but if I tell you his professional name, Tricky Dicky, you might know a bit more about who this person was. Now, it wasn't Richard Nixon, and it wasn't the title character of that Liebestoller 1962 hit, Tricky Dicky. This was Tricky Dicky, the disc jockey, who revolutionized gay social life in Britain in the 1970s. We go back to July the 1st, 1971. Such an important date, because that was Tricky Dicky's first gay disco. What had happened was that he was a disc jockey, and he went round to pubs and had discos, and he thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a gay disco? And so he went to various pubs and spoke to the managers and the owners, and he just got this blank stare. And he realized they didn't actually know what a gay disco was, so he had to explain it. And when he explained it, they said, sorry, we can't upset our regular customers. Sorry, we're not interested. But one person, one manager did listen to him, and that was the manager-owner of Father Redcap, which was an old established pub. It was in Camberwell in South London. And this is where he started his first gay disco. I think it was on a weeknight. I don't think it was on the weekend. And surprise, surprise, lots of people came. Because you see, there was really no gay music scene for gay people in Britain. Yes, there were gay pubs and gay bars and different ends of the pubs for different minorities, but this was a place where gay people could come together, they could be themselves, and they could dance, and they could clasp each other, and they could talk, and they could drink. And it was Richard Skeins, aka Tricky Dicky, who brought them this wonderful space, this night space. Very quickly, he went to other pubs, and in 1973, he was summoned because the police had brought a case against Father Redcap, the pub, for keeping a disorderly house. And he was accused of aiding and abetting the owner of the pub. And the particularly disorderly conduct was the getting too close to members of the same sex on the dance floor. And in fact, Tricky Dicky had encouraged that because, you know, when you're dancing with someone, it's really rather nice, isn't it, to get close to them. But the police didn't see it like that. They saw this as, you know, the thin end of the wedge, sex and sin. And Tricky Dicky was bound over for a year to keep the peace. But something very strange happened. There was actually no proof it was a disorderly house, and unconsciously the rules relaxed. So other publicans thought, well, we can have a gay disco, and of course the profits were very tempting indeed. So before he knew it, Dicky was working Monday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, even Sunday night. And I think in about 1975 he opened a proper disco called Fang, and it was the first purpose-made gay disco, so it wasn't just a place in a pub. And I think in 3 weeks' time there were people, it was packed inside, there were people queuing, and this really was the beginning of a whole new world. But Tricky Dicky was also interested, as well as playing music and having people get together, you know, possibly for a relationship, sex, whatever, but that wasn't his primary concern. His primary concern was creating a social scene where people could be themselves, come together. And he arranged trips, coach trips to Brighton. There were river trips on the Thames and lots of other social action, all with music, because he loved music. And what music it was, because we're talking about 1975, we're talking about 1976, 1977 with the disco revolution. We had punk, of course, and the music that he played, well, it contains classics like, you know, We Are Family, and all those wonderful disco hits of Donna Summer, I Feel Love, as well as Rose Royce. And the thing I loved about it, because I was working for Gay News from 1976, so I encountered Richard in a couple of ways. Every fortnight he'd come into the Gay News offices in Greyhound Road with his top 10. So we had this man come in, and we all called him Tricky Dicky, we never called him Richard. And he was the most unassuming, placid sort of chap. He wasn't trying to be young, he wasn't trying to be hip, he wasn't trying to be trendy. He was just very, very laid back. We all liked him very much. And the other way, of course, I encountered him was by actually going to the discos myself. Now, I am no disco bunny. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I can't dance, I'm not into the nightlife because I get up at 6 in the morning and I'm tired by 7 o'clock at night. But because I was working for Gay News, Bob Workman, the photographer, and I went to many discos, not just in London, but outside in Britain. And we would talk to the people and who were on the dance floor and at the bar. We talked to them about all sorts of things for articles that we were writing. So I heard all the music that Tricky Dicky and his other confreres on the dance floor were playing. And of course, the thing I loved about Tricky Dicky's top 10 was he always included a camp revamp. There was always a campy record that he played at the end of the night. So you'd have Mae West doing Great Balls of Fire. You'd have Petula Clark singing Love, This Is My Song. You'd have Marilyn singing I Want to Be Loved by You from Sound Like It Hot. Dicky had such a light touch. So we had the real pounding disco and rock music, but we also had the love songs and the quieter songs for later in the evening. It was a real production. He really knew how to entertain. He created, of course, an empire. He was technically, I suppose, the first gay emperor. Well, I think we all recognise that he was doing us the biggest favour. There'd been a lot of tension between the so-called scene gays and the political gays in the early part of the 1970s. And I think Tricky Dicky's discos, which didn't cost that much to go, and I think between something like 60p and £2, so it wasn't an exorbitant amount of money. Of course, they did expect you to drink, but you could go out for a whole night and not spend that much money. And he really brought us together because you'd see politicos and with their badges, you'd see fluffies, you'd see different age groups, although technically you had to be really under 30 to enjoy it. And I was under 30 at that time, believe it or not. So there was a certain ageism, but no one was stopped from going. I mean, women were welcome, even though they were mainly male. It was a very friendly, laid back. There was no violence, of course, very limited drug taking. I mean, I don't think people did really. And maybe there was a bit of action in the lavatories, I don't really know. But generally, it was the bar and the dance floor, and it was people talking. Now, Tricky Dicky himself was always a little bit disappointed that a lot of people went to meet someone. Now, on the surface, that may sound a bit hard, but he said the trouble is with going to meet somebody, you often leave very disappointed because you don't necessarily meet someone. He felt it would be really good just to go for a night's entertainment, to just enjoy the music, enjoy the lights, enjoy the embodiment of gay liberation, which is to be with other gay people. So he felt that really we shouldn't take it that seriously. The trouble was that when disco really came to town, a lot of the songs were very, very sexual, and a lot of their titles were sexual, and things like, One Night Stand, and I Want Your Body, and I Want to Do It With You, and all that kind of stuff. And you could say that in a way that created a kind of tension for people who felt that, well, everyone else was having sex, so why shouldn't they? I left Gay News at the end of the 1970s. Richard Scaines went on, of course, to have more and more discos, not just in central London, but in the East End of London, North London, South London, and outside London as well. I don't know that he went on into the 1990s. He may well have done, but he certainly had two extremely successful decades. He would have to be one of the most successful people on the gay scene because he couldn't stop making money. I mean, people just came to a Tricky Dicky disco because you were guaranteed a good night out. There was a kind of a quality guarantee about anything that he did. And he himself apparently was an extremely affable person. Yes, he was a businessman, of course, but he put the gay community first. And So Richard, wherever you are now, on whatever dance floor, I send you all my love and gratitude. Thank you so much.